You're watching The Buck Stops Here and I'm Barkha Dutt. On the program this evening, after the Delhi verdict, what will happen in Jammu and Kashmir? It looked like the PDP and the BJP had made serious progress on their talks. In fact, we were expecting an announcement this week with a swearing-in even slated for the weekend. But now in the very last lap, in the very last mile, a roadblock or two have sprung up. According to sources, the PDP now wants it written down that the present constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir would not change. That, of course, is a reference to Article 370. But, of course, the PDP also choosing its language carefully and not calling it special status. Will the BJP agree to do this? According to our sources, the common minimum program that is being discussed by both parties, with the negotiators being Ram Madhav for the BJP and Hasib Drabu for the PDP, is now with the Prime Minister. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have to decide how far the BJP is willing to travel to make the common minimum program a reality. On the program today, we'll be asking whether Jammu and Kashmir can afford a political vacuum and whether either the PDP or the BJP can afford to miss this political opportunity. Also coming up at 9:30 tonight is Greenpeace versus the government in court as details emerge of what the government said in court to justify why it stopped Priya Pillai from travelling abroad. We ask, is this about national interest or curbing dissent?
I don't know why the government is treating me like a fugitive, as if I'm somebody who's running away from this country.
Our big political debate on The Buck Stops Here tonight. The Prime Minister will now have to take a final decision on how far the BJP is willing to travel on the crucial negotiations with the PDP to form a government in Jammu and Kashmir. Sources on both sides are telling us that the negotiations have entered a critical phase and both sides are working overtime to try and reach a consensus, but there remain several sticking points, not least the PDP wanting a written assurance in the common minimum program that states that the present constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir will remain unchanged. In other words, the Article 370 obstacle. There are, of course, also other questions around the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Mufti Muhammad Saeed wanting a commitment to a dialogue with Pakistan as well as a dialogue with Kashmiri separatists, wanting a push for cross-border trade, and the BJP wanting a delimitation of constituencies and a special package for refugees from West Pakistan. On the Buck Stops Here tonight, we ask whether the BJP and the PDP in this case can cross the ideological divide. Or will we see a wasted opportunity? How will the Prime Minister respond? In many ways, it's in his hands now. Let's introduce our panel this evening. From the BJP, we're joined by its national spokesperson, GVL Narasimha Rao. From the army perspective and the security perspective, we have with us General Atta Hasnain. We should say that the PDP was not keen to take part in debates till the negotiations reach a decisive conclusion. We're also joined by Sushil Pandit. He's a Kashmiri Pandit in exile, but also a well-known advertising executive. And we're also joined by an eminent expert from Jammu and Kashmir, Anuradha Bhasin Jamwal, who's the executive editor of Kashmir Times. In a moment from now, we'll also be joined by Engineer Rashid, who's, of course, a member of the Legislative Assembly, the newly elected Assembly in Jammu and Kashmir. All right, I would like to start with you, Mr. Rao. We had negotiators like Ram Madhav going on record to say that there was progress in the talks, that things were going well, that we would see a swearing in, maybe even this weekend, definitely before the budget session. We're now seeing a last lap hurdle. We're seeing the PDP ask for a written assurance that the present constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir will remain unchanged. That doesn't seem like too much to ask for, except the BJP has to find a solution to, in a sense, justify to its core constituency that you're changing your mind about 370. Is the BJP willing to do that?
Barkha, to be very honest, I think there have been discussions and the discussions have been on for quite some time. Certainly, it has taken a lot of time because there are issues which cannot be resolved very easily, and both the parties have different positions or perceptions about different issues. So at this point of time, to really speak about a particular where exactly, which are the issues on which there needs to be some kind of a common ground that needs to be found, I think at this point of time, I think I am not in a position to give any further details. but certainly the talks have progressed, and there are issues on which both parties need to really show flexibility to be able to arrive at an understanding, something that can really, if at all we together form a coalition government, the government needs to be stable, and all the issues need to be hashed out.
Mr. Rao, I think it's important to underline that this is no ordinary election. This is an election where people have literally lost their lives. It's been a life and death issue in many ways. We all celebrated the turnout by saying it was the victory of the ballot over the bullet. But if at the end of it all, we are going to see only extended governor's rule, isn't it a wasted mandate? And what sort of message are we sending to Pakistan? I think I want to reflect a little bit about that on this program. But first, to get a perspective from Engineer Rashid. Rashid Saab, I want your perspective. The BJP and the PDP are trying very hard to come together. But as one PDP leader said to me, it's like the North Pole and the South Pole. The ideological gap is so wide. Do you believe it will be a setback for all of those who took part in the elections if the two of them fail in this critical phase of negotiations?
First, I will like to say that for me it is an unholy alliance, and I will like to remember the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, that it was he who was saying it is Papa Daddy Party, and PDP was seeking vote from Kashmiris only to have a blockage of BJP. But now when they are entering into alliance, let us expect they will do something concrete. Article 370 is not my problem. My problem is I would have felt accommodated if PDP would have discussed self-rule. They are not discussing self-rule. PDP is on the defensive. My problem is not Afsafa. I want Afsafa to be there so that world community realizes that there is some problem in the Kashmir and India is ruling Kashmir.
But that's an extreme position to take. That is an extreme position to take. You don't have the numbers to push for that position. The PDP is the single largest party in the assembly. So the position it takes is what people have voted it in for. You can't just take a randomly extreme position.
Exactly,
What we are looking at today, Rashid Saab, is are we going to let this election go waste? I think that is the most important question before us as a country. And I want General Atta Hasnain's response to this. General Hasnain is somebody who's been corps commander in the valley. You know how high... 1 minute, Rashid Saab, I'll come back to you. General Hasnain, you know how high the stakes are. Yet the BJP and the PDP find themselves locked in a conundrum here. North Pole, South Pole, ideologically opponents or foes, so to speak, trying desperately to come together for the sake of the state, for the sake of the country. How important is it for J&K to have a government, General Hasnain, even from a security perspective?
Thank you, first of all, Barkha. I think we are discussing a very, very relevant issue at the moment. Let me state that before the elections, while I was observing the situation there, I was all for an emergence of some kind of a situation by which both Jammu and Srinagar are empowered. And at the same time, of course, Ladakh would be in the middle of it also. The situation which panned out subsequently after the results came out, we found that actually both sides had really gained. It was Jammu which had been empowered, Srinagar which had been empowered. And we find that actually in national interest and in interest of national security, the finest situation had actually emerged in a way. And you find that both parties can come to a compromise, all for the sake of national interest. And I think this is a win-win situation for India altogether. Because I don't think we could have found a mandate in which either party would have had the complete majority. And we are being very realistic about it.
So General Hasnain, you are saying both leaders will have to show flexibility, both parties will have to move away from stated political positions. Is that what you're saying, General Hasnain?
What I am saying, Barkha, is that it is not necessary to stick to any stated positions. What was prior to the election was something different. What panned out subsequently is realism. What we got to see is make a government and ensure that grassroots political activity returns to Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir. And that itself will ensure subsequently the return of proper democracy. No doubt governor's rule is a good thing. You're finding having a very good state of governance, etc. But democracy, for which the elections were held, is not being promoted in any way.
Okay, Rashid Engineer's hand is going up, but I first must get the others up. And yes, 1 minute, Rashid Saab, 1 minute, Rashid Saab. Anuradha Bhasin, what is at stake for both the PDP and the BJP here? Now, the BJP, very interestingly, and I'll remind GVL Narasimha Rao of this also because I was reporting on the campaign, not once in the campaign of the state elections did the BJP bring up Article 370, Anuradha, as you know. So it's not as if it was not willing to put it on one side. But now the PDP is seeking an assurance on the present status remaining unchanged in writing. That might be politically difficult for the BJP, Anuradha.
It may be difficult for the BJP, but this is not a very unreasonable demand. Jammu and Kashmir, we need to understand, is a very delicate state. And BJP, when it started campaigning, it was at that point of time, it was not eyeing the valley right at the very beginning. It did rake up the Article 370. It was only later when they started eyeing the valley that they dropped that demand. So there is always that perception, there is always that fear that once in power or even out of it, they're going to rake it up. And once in power, they're going to be extremely problematic within Jammu and Kashmir.
So you're saying that it is reasonable, therefore, for the PDP, especially given its constituency in the valley, to want this assurance in writing. Sushil Pandit.
It's not only about the valley.
Sorry,
I think it's just a minute. Let me complete. It's not only about the valley. It's also about Jammu. For people in Jammu, Article 370 is not an issue. Article 370 is something which has remained a hollow shell. And Article 370, I mean, a lot of things. Before its dilution, we had the land reforms, which also benefited people in Jammu, the peasantry in Jammu. And the only thing that remains of Article 370 today is the land issue, the ownership of the land. And who all are the people who will be at a disadvantage if the Article 370 goes?
Okay, so you're saying it's not just about the valley. You're saying it's not just about the valley.
Yeah, it is not about the valley. It's also about Jammu region, and Article 370 is not an issue in Jammu region.
Okay, now Sushil Pandit, I want to ask you, you were there with me when we were broadcasting during the election campaign and the day the results came in. General Hasnain is making a very interesting point. He's saying for the larger interests at stake here, neither party can afford to really stick to its stated position. But at the moment, maybe after the Delhi verdict, the PDP is definitely driving a harder bargain than had the verdict gone maybe another way for the BJP. Can the BJP, invoking the Vajpayee legacy, show a kind of statesmanship and grab this opportunity with both hands? Because even if there is halla over Article 370 for 1 week, 1 month, the larger interest and the opportunity that Kashmir is throwing up, Jammu and Kashmir is throwing up today, is not something that anybody should ignore. Sushil.
Thank you, Barkha. First of all, let me wish all my co-panelists and people through your program a very happy Shivratri. It has been the most important festival of Kashmir for several millennia, and it is being celebrated today by Kashmiri Pandits across the world. Coming to what you've just asked, I think the operating phrase of General Hasnain's suggestion is national interest. Everything must be tested on that criteria. Any demand made, conceded, any concession sought has to be judged on how far will it serve national interest. And I think that's where lies the rub. Removing AFSPA when armed forces are locked in a war of attrition in Kashmir against jihad is suicidal for national interest. Asking BJP to write a blank check on Article 370 when they haven't had a debate on this internally or across the country with their cadres or within media is again putting a gun to their temple. I think this is unreasonable.
Then you're saying this alliance is not possible. Sushil, effectively you're then saying this alliance is not possible. See, and we can have a separate debate on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, because the argument could be made that there are areas where the situation has improved, so you can selectively withdraw it. You don't have to have a complete withdrawal. You can withdraw it from certain parts of the state, right? Like even especially on the Jammu side, for example, to start with.
Ma'am, allow me to respond. Allow me to respond.
Yeah, 1 minute. Sushil, I want you to say you're effectively saying this alliance does not work for you.
No. I must tell you something here. It is not a matter of compulsion that this alliance has to take place as a result of this verdict. There can be other alliances also. What stops BJP from sitting in the opposition and asking National Conference, PDP and Congress to stitch together an alliance? That is not an impossibility in the face of such impossible demands from PDP. Why should there be a compulsion on BJP to join the government eating crow on these issues on which it has defined
I want
its
GVL to
identity
respond
over the
to this.
last
I
few
want
decades.
GVL to respond to this, and then Anuradha and Engineer Rashid. I know both of you have your hands up, but GVL Narasimha Rao, can the BJP, I think the question is, can the BJP look at Jammu and Kashmir like it looks at Bihar and Delhi? I don't think so. I think the stakes are very high. I think the complexities are very different. I think you have Pakistan to contend with. I think a political vacuum in the state is lethal. I do think it's lethal. So my question to you is the converse of what Sushil is asking. Sushil is saying, why is the BJP obliged to meet these unreasonable demands of the PDP? The PDP may well turn around and say to the BJP, forget party politics right now. Think of India. Think of Kashmir. Mr. Modi can show statesmanship. Please respond, GVL.
I think whatever decisions that this possible coalition can arrive at, I think it has to keep the interest of all the three regions of Jammu and Kashmir, including Ladakh, and development of the state as a whole has been the main agenda of the BJP in the elections. Our vision document was all about governance and development of Jammu and Kashmir. And the kind of a mandate that people of Jammu and Kashmir have given, despite a very high participation, which was a very welcome outcome of these elections, the mandate that has been thrown up, it does not allow a participation of a government without the participation of the BJP. We don't think it is possible to have a viable government without the BJP in it. Now the question is...
That's an interesting point, and I do think you make a fair point. I do think you make a very fair point, and I want to take this to Anuradha and then Engineer Rashid. Anuradha, one of the reasons that Mufti Mohammad Saeed could not go with the Congress, apart from perhaps the inherent instability of a narrow set of numbers, was that the Congress did not have any Hindus among its winning candidates. And I think Mufti Mohammad Saeed was very clear that he needed that representation. He needed a balanced representation. Do you agree with GVL Narasimha Rao that without the BJP, there is no government possible in J&K to have a balanced representation of all three regions?
I think PDP-BJP coalition is one of the worst choices there is. A PDP Congress government, despite their own inherent their personality clashes and whatever, would have been a better choice despite the weak numerical strength, because ideologically they are you know, closer to each other. Then we also need to think about the Ladakh representation. If we are only thinking about the Hindu representation, we've missed out on the Ladakh representation. And before that, I mean, there were certain points being made about, I would also like to respond to that, about viewing Jammu and Kashmir elections in the national interest. Nowhere else in the country, assembly elections are held where, you know, national interest is invoked. Assembly elections are about governance of and about local issues, about local aspirations, about meeting local aspirations.
You're saying don't invoke
why do we need to look at Jammu and Kashmir differently? Is only shows what New Delhi's mindset is regarding this state. Sorry?
General Hasnain, please respond to that. Why should the assembly elections of Jammu and Kashmir be overburdened with national interests is the question from Anuradha. I would put it differently. I would say there's both national interests, but there's also an opportunity to build, to create building blocks of a peace process. And let's not ignore that. I mean, there's both. But General Hasnain, Anuradha raises a valid question. बाकी जगह assembly elections होते हैं तो हम इतनी burden of expectations नहीं डालते.
Let me introduce an element of pragmatism and realism in this whole debate.
Yes.
Right? Who can deny the fact that Jammu and Kashmir has been for the last 25 years in a state of an internal conflict with proxy war being sponsored from across the line of control? Who can deny that? So there is no linkage. There is no linkage to the aspect of elections anywhere else in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala with elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Let's be very clear on that, one aspect. Second thing which I want to introduce here is that time has gone on. This is a very dynamic situation. We are not at a time in which Jammu is no longer politically strong. 2008 changed many things. From 2008 to 2015, Jammu has been clamoring for greater empowerment. Now you find that the BJP's political victory in Jammu has brought about a greater empowerment of Jammu. So there has to be a balance.
Okay.
And this is the balance that we are seeking. And the national interest we are talking about is the representation of both sides, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh.
Okay, I want to bring in Engineer Rashid. Engineer Rashid, you said PDP should have been talking about self-rule. Right now, although that was their own slogan, they're having difficulty to get the BJP to meet it halfway on 370 or AFSPA. Aren't you taking a very extreme position? You contested this election. Would you not want to see a government in place? Do you really want to see an extended period of governor's rule, Rashid Saab?
Not at all, ma'am. But my point is that first we have to define what the national interest means. And my colleague said that Jammu people stand empowered. I think situation in Jammu stands polarized after 2008. What is the national interest? I agree we should get a governance. It's our right. People want a governance. But at the same time, you have not to see things in isolation. Let me respond to General Hasnain's comment that governance and delivery system whatsoever. People need a governance, but not at the cost of political aspirations. If PDP is sincere, it should talk to National Conference, it should talk to Congress. And what about BJP? What is Article 370? Why we are making Article 370 a dispute? It is adding salt to the injuries of Kashmiri people. Our dispute is not Article 370. Since last 29 years, there has been a turmoil. Everybody has been arguing with it, and you have to find a political solution. People are dying in Kashmir. Elections are held not only for the governance. Elections are not held only for governance, but after conducting elections, we have to take into consideration the political aspirations, and that is resolving political dispute of Jammu Kashmir amicably by making Article 370.
Okay, I want to bring in Sushil Pandit and then Anuradha on this. Sushil. I think when we listen to Engineer Rashid, he may be taking a position that even the PDP is not taking. However, it does tell you what a tough time the negotiators of the BJP and the PDP must be having right now. I should say again on this program, the PDP declined to take part in the television debate, because just in case you're wondering why their view is not represented, because they wanted the negotiations to be completed first. But Sushil, does a moment come when parties have to abandon ideology for the sake of a larger interest? You can call it national interest, Anuradha can call it the peace process. Both of you would be right in your own ways. My question is, do both parties need to abandon ideological rigidity?
Barkha, I completely agree with you, but the point is, this is extremely pernicious proposition that national interest has no role in Jammu and Kashmir. It is very sinister. The point is, if one has to abandon ideological positions, how? It should be national interest oriented. One can abandon ideological affirmations. The national interest has to be.
National interest to have a peace process revival in Jammu and Kashmir. Isn't that also
necessarily mean pushing Kashmiris to the wall?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The national interest means that people must realize that this country will remain one, and for the peace and development, everybody has to contribute together. It cannot be one-way traffic where you ask one political formation to give up everything in order to accommodate all kinds of unreasonable demands from the other. It has to be a reasonable give and take, and if the give and take is not possible, you don't have to insist on just one equation. Somebody said, why isn't Ladakh going to be represented? Well, Congress has all the 3 MLAs from Ladakh.
No, but what do you mean by give and take? It is state of India which has made commitments time and again. Right from 1947, not Kashmiri people. We eroded autonomy. Let us be honest. Let us be honest also.
How important it is.
We talked about embrace of humanity. We talked about UN.
1 minute.
We talked about similarities. We talked about humanity.
Yes.
So we are blaming Kashmiris. Why onus on us?
Why not onus on New Delhi?
My leader is to see things from the right perspective.
Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute. All of you please wait. Anuradha, go ahead. Anuradha.
Yeah. I'd just like to say that national interest and regional aspirations are often misinterpreted. When we talk about regional aspirations, even in Jammu region, it is not about Article 370, it is not about West Pakistan refugees that BJP is raking. Why
That is
is
what
it
you
that the
think.
BJP is not talking
No,
about the
that
other
is what you
refugees?
think.
Why is it insisting on the West Pakistan refugees, which
Of
is
course.
of
course
which
we
of
are.
course is a
Why
humanitarian
not?
problem.
Though why
I do
not?
agree.
Why not, Anuradha?
Please let me talk.
The
Please
counter
let me
question
talk.
is why not?
Take them to
Why
Bihar.
not?
Of course
Take them
we
to
are.
Bihar, Delhi,
All right,
Assam, Rajasthan,
I'm
Gujarat,
coming to
Madhya
that.
Pradesh.
Please let
Not
me
in Jammu.
complete. Please let me complete. The West Pakistan refugees, it is indeed a humanitarian problem, but it is extremely complex and a sensitive issue which cannot, which is hinged to the resolution of the Kashmir
That's
issue itself.
ridiculous.
And it cannot be resolved till the Kashmir issue itself is resolved. Number two, there are other regional aspirations of the people. Of course, Jammu people want to be empowered. The last few decades, they felt there has been this perception in Jammu, in various parts of Jammu, that they have been left out of the power situation.
I think Sushil is wanting to come in, and then I want to bring in
There are other issues.
Okay, Sushil,
There are other
minute,
issues. There are issues of internally displaced people. There are issues of the displaced people from Muzaffarabad and Mirpur. Apart from that, there are issues about Sadak Bijli Pani.
And the Kashmiri Pandits.
There are issues about
when we talk about displaced people, let's please remember the Kashmiri Pandits as well.
Absolutely.
And when, please,
Absolutely.
and I have a different
Barkha.
take on
Barkha.
BJP as representing Jammu's aspirations. Unfortunately or fortunately,
Barkha.
BJP in the last few elections, the 2008 elections and the 2014 elections, has been fortunate because it has been able to cash in on communal polarization.
Okay.
2008,
Okay,
after
Anuradha, you
the
made a number of
Amarnath
different
agitation.
points. One minute, now I have to interject here.
Because
I have to interject here because lots of other hands going up. Lots of other hands going up. Okay, Anuradha, you made many different points. You made many different points. Quick responses. First Sushil quickly, then GVL, then General Hasnain. Yes, Sushil, go ahead.
Barkha, you should have told me you have called Anuradha to represent the Hurriyat point of view in this program. I would have accordingly responded to her. This is completely unfair. She has taken...
Because you don't want to listen to the truth. Because you don't want to listen to the truth. That is why you are talking like that.
I mean, don't talk nonsense.
Listen,
don't talk nonsense on the television.
She is 100% right.
No, what? What?
Okay, let's stick to the issue. Let's stick to the issue.
No, she is telling you the truth. You are polarizing the situation in Jammu. That is why you got so many
Why
seats.
classify?
You are absolutely carrying forward a political agenda.
You're all speaking together.
What you are forgetting
One
is
minute,
not
please,
Gujarat.
everybody.
You don't agree with
1
me.
minute,
Brand me.
Anuradha, I told you the truth.
Rashid, just a minute. Please, I'm going to have to put your mics down. I'm trying to get a word in here. Sushil, please. Sushil.
I can have this man
Sushil,
when
why
he's talking in the
personalize?
most
Anuradha is
uncivilized
coming. Anuradha, listen to what I'm saying. Sushil, why personalize somebody's point of view by calling them the Hurriyat? Is that fair? Let's stick to the issue at hand.
No.
She says,
Listen.
1 minute, Sushil, let me ask the question. She raises the valid point that the PDP will resist a package for the West Pakistan refugees because they will say it's sensitive. It should
And
not
what
be seen
wrong
as
does
an attempt
Hurriyat
to change
say?
demographics of the state. Let him respond. उन्होंने सवाल किए. Let Sushil and GVL respond now. Sushil, please quickly respond to Mr. Rao.
I mean, this is incredible. When you say that people need to be treated humanitarianly, you will have different criteria for refugees of Jammu and a different criteria for people of Valley. They don't have aspirations which could be treated on an equal scale. This is amazing. And when I use the word Hurriyat, it is a metaphor for a separatist view of matter. There couldn't have been a better representation of that view on this program.
But the PDP,
it is a matter.
Sushil,
It's a metaphor more than actually accusing you.
No, because you are not used to
GVL
listen to the truth.
GVL
That is the
Rao.
problem.
Because
GVL Narasimha Rao, Mr. Rao,
because PDP,
Mr. Rao, this program reflects.
It is
1
my
minute.
suggestion.
This program reflects what Ram Madhav, this program GVL Narasimha Rao reflects what Haseeb Drabu and Ram Madhav are going through. How do you bridge this ideological gap between Sushil Pandit and Anuradha Bhasin? Is actually to me, an amplified version of the quiet gap. Quietly, how the two negotiators are trying to bridge this gap. That gap is there. Your two parties can't agree on the West Pakistan refugees, they don't agree on delimitation, they don't agree on Armed Forces Special Powers Act, they don't agree on 370, yet both are confident that a government could still be formed. Mr. Rao.
As I stated earlier, the objective of all these discussions was to explore the possibility of a formation of a government, because we've had excellent elections. peaceful elections, largely
Yes.
peaceful elections.
Yes.
And
Yes.
now, and there is no other combination possible. And there was an attempt. In fact, the National Conference had given support to the PDP, and they did not take it for
Yes.
reasons that both parties would know better. And which other state in the country would have a situation that two months after the elections, people are not easily coming together to form a government? Any other state, it would have happened in 72 hours at the max.
Okay.
So
Okay.
certainly there are
Okay.
specific
General
situations, and
Yeah.
then the comments by this lady
It's
on the
not
program,
easy.
Anuradha, I
No.
think are very offensive.
Yes.
We don't want you to be judgmental. The BJP has got support base on the basis of its mandate, and that was for development and governance. Your colored views on communalism are not going to really make any difference to us.
Okay, okay,
You
one
are
minute.
completely
One minute,
colored,
General Hussain,
and
General
you
Hussain,
seem to have
General
separatist
Hussain.
views. I have no problem in seconding that opinion.
1 minute, 1 minute. Now, the point is, General Hussain, the reality of Jammu and Kashmir is that while GVL and Sushil are offended by Anuradha and Engineer Rashid's views, General Hussain, this is actually what the negotiators are going through. How do you find common ground with this divergence of political ideology?
What surprises me, Barkha, is that these 10 or 12 issues are actually all festering issues for many, many years. And here we are trying to seek a compromise, a solution on
And
these
then will you
in a
resolve
matter
them?
of 2 or
Will
3
you only
months.
go on crying that there are 12 issues outstanding?
Can I complete, Engineer Saab?
We need to resolve things.
Rashid Saab, I
Yes,
am
sir.
with
Why
you
not? But
completely.
we need to resolve them also.
Rashid Saab,
Okay,
सुन
please
लीजिए
let the
पहले मेरी
General
बात.
speak. I have to end. General,
These
General Saab,
are
please, jaldi se.
festering
General
issues which
Hussain.
have been there. No, I have great respect for both the political maturity of the BJP and political maturity of the PDP. I have worked in Kashmir at a time when the NDA government was in power, when the PDP government was in power. And I can only advise and say that actually you should not be looking for compromises. I think a government can come into place, and this is something which progressively you can keep resolving. You will find that it will not be such a problem to bring grassroots democracy back to Kashmir and look at some of the social issues and the governance issues instead of actually looking at all these contentious political issues.
I will unfortunately have to leave it there. I know we can debate Jammu and Kashmir for hours. Anuradha Bhasin Jamwal, Engineer Rashid, General Hussain, GVL Narasimha Rao, Sushil Pandit. At the moment, the negotiations have entered a decisive phase. The next few days will be critical. But I think this program is an illustration of what a difficult task the BJP and the PDP have on their hands. But there are larger interests at stake here. You could call them interests for the peace process. You could call them interests for the country. Whatever be your view, a political vacuum in Jammu and Kashmir is just a really, really bad idea. We'll be taking a quick break. On the other side is Greenpeace versus government in court. Is the government really crushing down on Greenpeace in national interest, or is it crushing dissent? That debate is coming up on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching The Buck Stops Here, and it's time now to turn our focus on the big battle between Greenpeace and the government. Details of the affidavit submitted by the government are now available in the public domain. Among the arguments that the government has made to justify why it stopped Greenpeace activist Priya Pillai from travelling to the United Kingdom, argue that her travel and her deposing before a foreign parliament would have been prejudicial to national interest. The affidavit goes on to argue that Pillai's testimony would have left India open to a sanction regime, and it goes on to say that these are instruments of control used to subdue India's increasing strength in global platforms. Is the government really acting in national interest, or is it effectively crushing dissent and crushing those who disagree with it and challenge its policies? Let's introduce our panel this evening. From the BJP, we're still with GVL Narasimha Rao, the national spokesperson of the party. From Bangalore today, we're joined by Samit Aich, the executive director of Greenpeace India. And also joining us is Siddharth Varadarajan, senior journalist, editor and columnist. I'll start with you, Mr. Rao. This sounds a bit absurd. It almost makes the government sound paranoid. Are you saying one individual, one NGO can alter India's fortunes and fate on the global stage?
No, I think the reference should not be seen to be only to one individual or one organization, but this has been used as an instrument of foreign policy by many countries like the US, UK and European Union. I think that's what the affidavit talks about. And the intelligence report that was in public domain in the month of June, which was actually commissioned by the previous regime, that also brought to light a lot of NGOs working in specific sectors, which are sunrise sectors for the economy, where the involvement of the activism and foreign funded activism. The real problem is a huge doubts arise also because of the nature of funding.
The court did not accept your argument. The court in fact ordered the government to unfreeze the accounts of Greenpeace. So this paranoia about foreign funding on the one hand but opening up India to foreign investment in all other areas, isn't there a contradiction?
No, I think in the case of foreign direct investment, people are coming with a specific purpose. Here, the so-called foreign funding to the NGOs, I think this is an absurd argument put forward by many NGOs, that you also have to stop FDI if foreign donations are not acceptable. These foreign donations, a lot of them come with a specific motive, and the motive is to hurt India's economic interest in certain sectors. This is an apprehension that was mentioned in the IB report.
Stay with us, Mr. Rao. Stay with us, Mr. Rao. Let me get a response from Samit now and Siddharth. Samit, I'll start with you. One of the questions that's being asked is, criticize the government all you want, but why do you need to go and depose before another country's parliament? That is something that will leave a lot of Indians uncomfortable. How do you respond to that specific charge? Because that's what's been brought up in the government affidavit as well.
Well, actually, Barkha, I'm not actually quite surprised at what Mr. Narasimha Rao is saying on behalf of the government. But I'll come back to that later. I think more importantly is to understand this level of paranoia the government is currently facing and targeting Greenpeace in India. Priya Pillai was invited as a part of the APPG, the All-Party Parliamentary Group in the British House of Commons, because she was she has been campaigning in the forests of Mahan in a coal mine which has been in the interest of SR Energy. And by the way, you have to keep in mind some technical details. SR Energy is headquartered in Mauritius. It is listed in the London Stock Exchange. It is owned by two NRIs, and nothing about them seems to be Indian. And for some strange reason, they continue to insinuate Greenpeace and say that Greenpeace is foreign funded. I fail to understand that how with this combination of Mauritius, London and NRIs, can Greenpeace India be foreign and SR be construed as being an Indian company?
Okay, Samit, before I take that back to Mr. GVL Rao, Siddharth, what sort of questions is this collision between the government and the Greenpeace really throwing up? This isn't just about one NGO. Now, there are many people who may not necessarily agree with Greenpeace's extreme methods or extreme positions, but the fact that the government is actually responding in court and saying, no, this one person traveling abroad could hurt our national interests, and that anyone who deposes before a foreign parliament is prejudicial to national interests. Do you think the government has any point when it says, why depose before another country's parliament?
You see, the fact of the matter is that whether somebody goes there physically to depose, as Priya Pillai was planning to do before she was stopped, or whether she deposes via Skype, which is evidently what she did, or if the British parliamentary delegation picks up an Indian newspaper which carries an article by her and cites that as a source in a footnote for a report that they come up with, all of these are completely interchangeable. So, you know, the government is tilting at windmills. The fact of the matter is that India is a democratic society, and Indians are free to criticize their government and to criticize government policies and to do so in fairly harsh and
but Siddharth, do they need to take that criticism outside India? I think the question the BJP is asking is, you need to take that criticism to another country's parliament.
Barkha, your program can be watched in London. So tomorrow, if the Home Ministry were to say that featuring Mr. Aich on your program and making it available to British MPs in London endangers, you know, where does this whole drama end? And what worries me about the affidavit is not just its irrationality, but the fact that the government is pushing it so aggressively, despite the fact that in the last hearing the High Court judge who was hearing the matter appeared to be not very convinced by the way in which the government was presenting its arguments. So I think it looks like the MHA, the Government of India, will take this matter all the way to the Supreme Court. They seem to be wedded to this idea that they have the right to stop anybody from airing views. And today it's about foreign travel. Tomorrow it will be about views. Make no mistake about it.
Now, GVL Narasimha Rao, please respond to that. That in a way, what the position you're taking. One minute. Let me ask my question. Is actually defying technology. You know, technology has outpaced your politics. I think that's what both Siddharth and Samit are saying. They may not agree with your politics, but the technology has outpaced it anyway. Priya Pillai Skyped the British parliamentary delegation that she was supposed to physically meet. This program is broadcasting, as Siddharth said, in London tonight.
Yeah, I think nobody needs to really validate that we have the kind of personal freedom and liberty that possibly no other country can better. The fact that we are discussing it repeatedly on television, yes, does it not mean that everyone enjoys the freedom? And even the Greenpeace people going around making all statements against government, they're allowed to do it. There is no bar on anything. But when it becomes prejudicial to national interest, I think government has a right, government has a duty to intervene. I think we have seen how activists like even Tista Sitalwad, under the garb of fighting for the rights of community. Certainly this is an extension of that.
Case is also seen to be a collision of political ideologies. Okay, Siddharth, you had a question for GVL Rao, and then I'll come to Samit. Siddharth, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Rao, why is Priya Pillai going to London more prejudicial to India's national interest than her speaking to those MPs via Skype or via a newspaper article or via Barkha's program? If you're saying that her giving information directly to the British MPs is prejudicial, then surely the manner and form in which that information is given should be quite irrelevant from your point of view. So why are you objecting to just one form and not the others?
No, I think first of all, I'm not objecting to anybody going anywhere, but the issue is, I think the document affidavit itself clearly mentions, I think the whole so-called disposition or it gets a lot of the testimony, gets a lot of weight when these people go in person and depose before them. And secondly, I think this also through this episode, I think there has been a lot of public awareness that has got generated, but if what has been done is not approved by the court, and courts are there to really set aside any government decision.
Mr. Rao, I have one last question for you before we let you go, because I know you have to go. My last question for you is one Priya Pillai so threatening to the might of the government of India? I have never seen a government go after one individual and one group in this manner. Surely India is large enough to accommodate a diversity of opinions and ideologies.
No, it is not one Priya Pillai who is being targeted here. I think there is nobody who is being targeted. This is symptomatic of many organizations receiving foreign funding and working to the detriment of India's interest. It's a message to that group as a whole.
Barkha,
it's not an individual who is being targeted.
One point. Barkha, Mr. Rao,
Samit's wanting to say something to you.
Has been talking about foreign funding. Yeah, Mr. Rao has been talking about national interest. I'd like to question who only decides national interest. It is only the government, or is it also affected tribals and affected people in the communities who also have a right to this debate? Unfortunately, it seems that
GVL, quick response to that. I'll come back to you, GVL, quick response.
Is being defined only by the government.
Okay, Mr. Rao, quick response.
Government is not all that powerful as you think. There are any actions of the government are subject to scrutiny by the courts. And there is a thriving and independent media in this country where you are able to articulate your concerns. And just for fighting for the rights of tribals, if you continue to fight against the economic growth of the country, I think government will continue to express its own concerns.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Rao. Let me put these questions to Samit now. Samit, one of the criticisms that was raised about Greenpeace was that you were accused in that Intelligence Bureau report of funding an Aam Aadmi Party candidate from the very area where you were protesting. So one, it was seen as getting involved in politics. Two, it was seen as a kind of conflict of interest. So how do you respond to that you conflated your political support with a cause that you were supporting?
Barkha, the IB report is the biggest joke of our lifetime, and at least the biggest joke of 2014. The government has got all the facts wrong in the Rai report. A classic example of how it got the facts wrong was when the Delhi High Court passed a judgment which you just referred to about the fact that just because Greenpeace India has an opinion which is different from the government's doesn't make it anti-national. In fact, the court has very clearly told in its verdict about the government, which has said that the government has acted against Greenpeace in an arbitrary manner, in an unconstitutional manner, and in an illegal manner.
But are you denying this accusation?
I think that's a very strong statement.
I think it's a very strong statement. Set the record straight on. But Samit, are you denying that you funded the candidate in Mahan where you're also protesting against SR? I think that's one of the allegations you do have to come, clarify. Are you denying that allegation, Samit?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I can't hear you properly, Barkha. Could you just repeat it slowly, please?
Are you denying the allegation that you funded a candidate in the very area where you're protesting against SR?
Absolutely.
That's the charge in the
absolutely. I would like to challenge anyone who comes and gives us proof for that. This is one of the stories that has been planted in the IB, and that has been challenged. We are going to challenge it, and it's absolutely false and wrong. It's a lie.
Okay.
May I say it? It's a lie.
Okay, Siddharth, last words to you. What do you make of this, as you said, this very aggressive posture that's taken by the government? Is it just somebody down the ranks among the law officers who's arguing in court? Because when initially Priya Pillai was stopped, all the ministries disowned any responsibility or knowledge as to why she was stopped.
No, it's very clear from this affidavit and the very aggressive language used that the government has taken a conscious decision to pursue this matter. So even if they weren't involved, we don't know how high the decision making went to stop Priya Pillai, but now that she's been stopped, I think it's clear that the government intends to fully stand by this absurd decision. And the logic, as I said, it's a slippery slope. Today, the government is citing the fact that activists are free to go to court and free to write in papers, and they don't have to go abroad to testify. But those same court documents and those same articles can and will be used by foreign governments if they so desire. So does that mean that those activities also will then come under a microscope? So I think, this kind of logic, the government of India needs to be more confident about where India stands in the world. If there is a threat of sanctions, you fight that diplomatically. You don't fight that by clamping down on the democratic rights of people.
Okay, we leave it there. Siddharth Vardharajan, Samit, Narasimha Rao, thank you so much for joining us on the Buck Stops here. Thanks very much. This is a story we'll continue to follow.